If you are over the age of 50 and you have a Social Security check landing in your bank account, stop whatever you are doing right now, because the headline screaming across the internet that a 24% slash is automatically tracking toward your money this month is not telling you the whole truth. And the part they are leaving out is the part that can actually cost you thousands of dollars in the next 12 months. You have seen the panic. You have seen the videos warning that Washington is about to gut your retirement overnight. And here is what almost nobody is brave enough to say out loud. The viral version of this story is wrong, but the calm version that the comfortable experts are feeding you is also wrong, and the truth sits in a place that neither side wants you to look. Stay with me to the end of this video, because the single most important protective move, the one form that can claw back money the government is quietly taking from you right now, is something I am going to walk you through step by step, and I am saving the most powerful piece for the final stretch because it is the piece they bury. Let me give it to you straight with verifiable federal numbers and not rumor. Reality number one, the trust fund panic. Yes, the Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is on a countdown. The 2025 Trustees Report, the official one, projects that the Old Age and Survivors Insurance Trust Fund reserves will be depleted around 2033, and if Congress does nothing at all, the program would still take in enough payroll tax revenue to pay roughly 77 cents on every dollar of scheduled benefits, which is where that frightening cut figure of about 23 to 24% actually comes from. Read that again slowly. That is a projected baseline risk 8 years out if lawmakers refuse to act. It is not a check that gets shredded this June. There is no statute on the books today that authorizes the Social Security Administration to walk into your account next month and carve off a quarter of your payment. The people spreading the automatic immediate slash story are weaponizing a real long-term shortfall to scare you into clicking, and fear makes people freeze instead of act, and freezing is exactly how you lose money. So put the 2033 number where it belongs, on your radar, in your voting decisions, in your planning, but not in your panic. Because while everyone is staring at a cliff 8 years away, the real money is being pulled out of your pocket right now, today in 2026, and this is reality number two, and it is the one that is actually hitting your statement. Look at your Medicare. The standard Medicare Part B premium for 2026 is $202.9 per month, up from $185 in 2025, an increase of almost 10% in a single year. That premium is deducted directly from your Social Security payment before the money ever reaches you, so every cost of living adjustment you fought for gets quietly eaten from the inside. On top of that, the annual Part B deductible climbed to $283 for 2026, up $26 from the year before, which means more of your own cash out of pocket before coverage even kicks in on outpatient care and doctor visits. Nobody mailed you a flashing red alert about this. There was no breaking news countdown. It just happened, line by line, dollar by dollar, and it is happening to roughly 70 million beneficiaries at the same time. This is the clawback that is real and immediate, and it is the one the viral insolvency hysteria is distracting you from. But here is where it gets serious. And here is the piece I told you I was holding, because there is a specific group of you watching right now who are being overcharged on that Part B premium and do not even know it. And there is a federal form that can fight it. This is reality number three, your shield, and you need to hear all of it. The Social Security Administration sets something called the Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount, IRMAA for short, which is a surcharge added on top of that standard $202.9 premium for higher income beneficiaries. And in 2026, those surcharges kick in above $109,000 for a single filer and $218,000 for a married couple filing jointly, pushing the total monthly Part B cost into the range of roughly $284, all the way up to nearly $690 per month, depending on your bracket. Now here is the trap that catches so many retirees. The SSA determines your IRMAA using your tax return from 2 years earlier. For 2026, that means they are reaching back to your 2024 income to decide what you pay today. Think about who that punishes. If you were still working in 2024 and then you retired, if you sold a home, if you took a one-time capital gain, if your spouse passed away and your filing status changed, the government is charging you a surcharge based on a financial life you no longer live. They are billing the old you and ignoring the real you. And most people just pay it because they assume a federal determination is final. It is not. This is the move. The form is called the SSA 44, the Medicare Income Related Monthly Adjustment Amount Life-Changing Event Form, and it exists for exactly this situation. If you have experienced a qualifying life-changing event such as retirement, work stoppage or reduction, marriage, divorce, the death of a spouse, or loss of income-producing property, you can file the SSA 44 to ask the Social Security Administration to recalculate your IRMAA based on your current reduced income instead of that stale 2-year-old return. You document the event, you estimate your corrected income, you attach proof such as a signed statement from a former employer or a benefit termination letter, and you submit it to your local Social Security office. When it is approved, that surcharge can be reduced or removed, and the difference is real money returned to your monthly check month after month for the rest of the year. That is not a loophole. That is a right written into the rules, a right the SSA will not chase you down to remind you about because the surcharge is the default and silence is on their side. And while you are protecting that monthly cash flow, here is the companion strategy almost no one talks about. Build yourself a buffer. Park a cushion of cash in a high-yield checking or savings account so that when these premium hikes and deductible jumps land, and they will keep landing every single January, you are absorbing them from a reserve instead of from your survival budget, and that reserve is quietly earning interest while it waits instead of sitting dead in a 0% account losing ground to inflation. The buffer protects your dignity. The SSA 44 protects your premium. And understanding the difference between a 2033 projection and a 2026 deduction protects your peace of mind from the people who profit off your fear. So let me bring it all the way home. The 24% automatic/story you have been losing sleep over is a distorted version of a genuine long-term challenge that is years away and entirely within Congress to fix. While the actual money leaving your account right now is the $202.9 Part B premium, the $283 deductible, and an IRMAA surcharge that may be calculated on income you no longer earn. The viewers who act on the SSA 44 this month will recover money that the panicked viewers will never even realize they lost. Do not be the second kind. If this opened your eyes, I am begging you, subscribe to this channel right now because regulatory policy is shifting constantly and the next change is already coming. And I am going to be here breaking down every single one of them in plain English so your household is never caught off guard. And do not keep this to yourself. Share this video with your spouse, your siblings, your friends at church, anyone over 50 who is scared of the headlines. Because the single fastest way to stop financial misinformation from draining our generation is to put the real numbers and the real forms into the hands of the people who need them most. Subscribe, share, and stay sharp, because the ones who stay informed are the ones who keep what they earned. You know the feeling. You're at a red light, and the car that used to pull clean off the line is now stumbling, hunting for idle, shaking slightly through the steering column like something inside the engine is just not happy anymore. Your fuel economy has dropped 2 miles per gallon from what it was 3 years ago, and you can't point to a single broken thing. No check engine light, no catastrophic noise, just a slow, grinding erosion of the performance and efficiency you paid for, creeping up on you so gradually that by the time you notice it, you've already lost 30% of what your engine used to be. You've done the research. You know exactly what this is. Modern direct injection engines, the ones in virtually every car built in the last 15 years, have a fundamental architectural flaw that the engineers knew about when they designed them and the manufacturers have quietly accepted as your problem to deal with. In a port injection engine, fuel spray washes the back of the intake valves on every single combustion cycle, keeping them clean. In a direct injection engine, fuel goes straight into the cylinder and never touches the valves at all. What does touch the valves, constantly, on every revolution, is the oily vapor blowing back through the positive crankcase ventilation system. That PCV vapor hits the hot metal of the valve stem, the valve head, the valve seat, and it bakes. Cycle after cycle, month after month, year after year, a layer of carbonized oil sludge builds up on the back of your intake valves that starts restricting airflow, disturbs the fuel charge, kills combustion efficiency, and robs you of the power and economy you paid for. And here is where the industry steps in to tell you that fixing this is expensive, complicated, and absolutely requires a professional. A dealership or independent shop will quote you somewhere between $600 and $900 to perform a walnut shell blasting service where a technician removes your intake manifold, inserts a specialized blasting gun into each intake port, and physically abrades the carbon off the valves with high-pressure walnut shell media. It works. It is also the most expensive way to solve this problem by an enormous margin. So you walk into the auto parts store looking for a cheaper answer, and you find an entire wall of it. Professional grade intake valve cleaners, top engine treatments, direct injection specific carbon removal systems, foaming aerosols with diagrams on the back showing before and after photos of intake valves going from black rock to gleaming metal. You buy one, you follow the instructions, you spray the foam into your intake while the engine runs, rev it up, maybe do a hard pull down the highway, and then you wait for the transformation. What you actually get is a lot of white smoke out the exhaust, a rough idle for 20 minutes, and maybe a marginal improvement that you can't honestly say you felt or measured. And underneath the marketing copy on those cans is a problem that the industry does not want you thinking about, which is that introducing a heavy, slow-acting solvent foam into a running intake manifold is genuinely dangerous if you do it wrong, and the instructions on the can give you just enough rope to do it exactly wrong. Those foams are dense, heavy, uncompressible liquids. When a cylinder on its intake stroke takes a gulp of that foam pooled in the manifold floor, it is pulling liquid into a space that is about to be subjected to thousands of pounds per square inch of compression force. Liquid does not compress. Your piston does not know that. Your connecting rod does not care. The result of pulling a significant slug of liquid into a cylinder at high RPM is called hydrostatic lock, and it bends connecting rods, cracks pistons, and destroys engines in a fraction of a second. The can tells you to spray slowly. It does not tell you what slowly means in the context of a manifold that is actively pulling vacuum on every intake event. It does not tell you what happens if you have a slightly larger vacuum leak downstream than expected and the foam travels faster than you anticipated. The auto parts industry has built a category of products around a process that carries real catastrophic risk, packaged it in a bright can with confident marketing, and placed it at eye level next to the motor oil. That is what you are buying for $20. Now, let me show you what engine builders actually use. The real secret is in the pharmacy aisle, in a bottle that costs less than $2, that has been used by professional engine builders and track mechanics for decades to clean carbon deposits from running intake tracks without chemicals, without solvents, without foam, and without the hydraulic lock risk that makes the commercial products so genuinely dangerous when misused. It is distilled water, not tap water, not filtered water, not reverse osmosis water from your refrigerator. Pharmaceutical grade distilled water sold in the pharmacy section next to contact lens solutions and medical nebulizer supplies in a 1-liter bottle for under $2. And before you click away thinking this is a joke, I need you to understand the actual chemistry of what happens when a precisely metered, fine mist of distilled water enters a hot running intake tract, because once you understand the mechanism, you will never look at a $20 aerosol can the same way again. This is the science they don't want you running at home. Inside your intake manifold right now, the back face of each intake valve is coated with a layer of polymerized oil carbon that formed through a specific thermal process. PCV blow-by vapor, which is a mixture of unburned fuel, water vapor, and oil mist from the crankcase, enters the intake tract through the PCV valve and deposits an oil film on the valve surfaces. Every time the engine reaches operating temperature, that oil film undergoes thermal oxidation and polymerization, the same chemical transformation that turns cooking oil in a pan into a hard, sticky residue when the heat is too high. What you are dealing with on the back of your intake valves is functionally the same thing: a cross-linked polymer matrix of oxidized hydrocarbons baked into a hard, brittle, layered structure over thousands of heat cycles. Commercial solvent cleaners attack this matrix through dissolution, trying to break down the polymer bonds using hydrocarbon solvents. The problem is that penetrating a hard, dense polymer matrix with a solvent under time pressure in a running engine is slow and inefficient. The solvent has milliseconds of contact time before it is swept into the cylinder, and it simply cannot dissolve through the full depth of a thick carbon layer in that window. Steam hydrolysis works through a completely different and far more efficient mechanism. When distilled water enters the intake tract as a fine mist and contacts a hot intake valve running at temperatures above 150 to 200 degrees Celsius, it does not stay liquid. It flashes instantly to superheated steam. That phase transition from liquid to vapor involves an enormous volumetric expansion, roughly 1,600 times the liquid volume at atmospheric pressure, happening in a fraction of a millisecond at the valve surface. That rapid steam generation at the interface between the water droplet and the carbon surface drives water molecules mechanically into the microfissures and pore structure of the carbon layer. Once inside, those water molecules do two things simultaneously. First, the continued thermal energy drives further vaporization deeper in the crack network, mechanically wedging the fissures open and creating delamination between the carbon layer and the metal valve surface. Second, and this is the chemistry that makes steam cleaning so effective on organic polymer deposits, the water molecules at elevated temperature carry out nucleophilic hydrolysis on the ester linkages and carbonyl groups in the polymerized oil matrix. Water attacks the carbon-oxygen bonds in the polymer backbone, breaking the cross-linked structure into smaller, lower molecular weight fragments that are far more volatile and far easier to combust cleanly when they enter the cylinder. This is precisely the same mechanism used in industrial steam cleaning of turbine blades, jet engine components, and industrial heat exchangers, where carbon and polymer fouling needs to be removed from high-temperature metal surfaces without abrasion and without chemical contamination. The aerospace industry has known about this for 60 years. The automotive detailing industry sells you a $20 aerosol instead. The distilled water protocol delivers a mechanical and chemical attack on the carbon layer simultaneously, works in contact times measurable in milliseconds, leaves zero chemical residue because it is water, and the combustion byproduct is more water vapor, and costs $2 for enough volume to treat your entire intake system twice. Here is the exact protocol. Start with a fully warm engine. This is non-negotiable. The intake valves need to be at full operating temperature, which means the engine has been running at normal operating temperature for at least 10 to 15 minutes under moderate load, not just idling in the driveway. An engine that has only been idling may have cylinder head temperatures that are lower than you expect, and you need that thermal mass in the valve metal to drive the flash vaporization that makes this work. With the engine warm and running, increase idle speed to approximately 2,000 to 2,500 RPM using either the throttle or a prop under the gas pedal. You want a stable, elevated RPM, not a fluctuating idle. Locate a substantial vacuum line on the intake manifold. On most modern engines, you will find accessible vacuum ports on the intake manifold body or at the brake booster line junction. You are looking for a line that connects directly to manifold vacuum, not a line serving a sensor or a solenoid. The brake booster line is often the most accessible large-bore vacuum line on the manifold and is a common access point. Do not disconnect a sensor line. Do not use a line serving the fuel pressure regulator. Use a main manifold vacuum port. Obtain a medical-grade microdrip tube or a clean, thin aquarium airline tube. You are going to create a controlled gravity drip, not a pressurized injection. Fill a small container with your pharmaceutical distilled water and allow the tube to create a drip feed into the vacuum line port using manifold vacuum to draw the water in. The critical variable, and this is where the protocol either works or destroys your engine, is the rate of introduction. You must meter the water at an absolute maximum rate that allows the engine to process each increment before the next arrives. In practice, this means a thin, intermittent drip that the engine audibly stumbles slightly on for a fraction of a second and then recovers from immediately. If the engine stumbles and does not recover within 1 second, you are feeding water too fast. Stop. Allow the engine to stabilize, reduce your drip rate, and resume. The target is a process that takes a minimum of 10 to 12 minutes to introduce 6 to 8 ounces of distilled water total. You should see a progressive increase in white steam vapor from the exhaust as the treatment proceeds. This is normal and expected. It is water vapor and the fine carbon particulate being expelled from the combustion chambers. After the full volume has been introduced and the engine is running cleanly at elevated RPM, take the car for a sustained high-load drive. Highway speeds with firm throttle application for 5 to 10 minutes gives the thermal and mechanical conditions for the loosened carbon fragments to fully combust and exit through the exhaust. This is not optional. The highway drive is the final step that clears what the steam loosened. Now here is the critical warning, and this is not a legal disclaimer buried in fine print. This is information that protects your engine from catastrophic and unrecoverable mechanical damage. Liquid water is incompressible. This is a law of physics, not a suggestion. If you introduce water into a running intake at a rate faster than the engine can instantly vaporize it at the valve surface, liquid water will pool in the intake manifold, be inhaled in bulk by a cylinder on its intake stroke, and create a hydrostatic lock event. The piston comes up on compression, finds a cylinder full of liquid, and something in the engine gives way. That something is your connecting rod, your piston, or your engine block. Hydrostatic lock from water induction is a total engine failure event. The engine does not make a warning noise, it does not hesitate. It destroys itself in the time it takes the crankshaft to complete half a revolution. The drip rate protocol described here exists specifically to prevent this. If you cannot maintain a controlled drip and you find yourself dealing with a flow rate you cannot meter accurately, stop the procedure entirely. This is not a project for a cold engine, a high idle speed engine you cannot control, or a situation where you do not have full visual and physical control of the water feed rate at every moment. The commercial foam cleaners carry this same risk and bury it in instructions that do not communicate the actual failure mode clearly. I am telling you directly, water in a cylinder kills engines. Your drip rate is the single variable that stands between a clean set of intake valves and a destroyed engine. Control it with absolute precision or do not proceed. Beyond the rate control, you must use distilled water exclusively. Tap water contains dissolved minerals, primarily calcium and magnesium carbonates, that will deposit on your hot intake valves and valve seats as scale during the flash vaporization process. You will trade a carbon problem for a mineral deposit problem, and mineral scale on valve seats is harder, more abrasive, and more damaging to the valve seating surface than carbon. Filtered water is not sufficient. Reverse osmosis water is close but not guaranteed to be at the mineral purity level of pharmaceutical distilled. Spend the $2 on the bottle from the pharmacy aisle. It is sold as pure distilled water for medical nebulizers and contact lens equipment, and it is the correct specification for this application. Now look at what you just did and what it cost you against what the industry wanted to charge you. The dealership wanted $800 and a 2-day turnaround to remove your intake manifold and blast your valves with walnut shells. That is legitimate work, and for severely carboned engines with thick, hard deposits that have built up over 100,000 miles, it may still be necessary. But the regular maintenance that prevents you from ever reaching that level of severity, the cleaning that keeps moderate buildup from becoming severe buildup, the treatment that restores your idle quality and sharpens your throttle response without a shop appointment costs $2.45 of your Saturday. The steam hydrolysis protocol does what the $20 aerosol cans claim to do through a mechanism that actually works at engine operating temperatures without the solvent chemistry that requires the heavy foam volume that creates the hydraulic lock risk in the first place. The aerospace and industrial maintenance world has used controlled steam induction to clean carbon from high temperature metal components for decades. Your intake valves are high temperature metal components with carbon deposits. The physics transfers exactly. Share this video right now with every person you know who drives a modern direct injection engine, which is to say, virtually everyone you know who has bought a car in the last 15 years. They are all living with some degree of this buildup right now, whether they know it or not. The stumble at idle, the slight hesitation off the line, the fuel economy that used to be better, all of it traces back to valves that fuel never touches, and a crankcase ventilation system that never stops depositing oil vapor on hot metal. $2. Pharmaceutical distilled water, controlled drip. The garage underground knows this. Now you do too.